Hello, students. So in this video, we'll be learning about how to design a date class in Java. So this class, the purpose of designing this class is to practice how to use the constructors, how to design the methods, accessor methods, and the mutator methods, and how we can actually design our Java date class that can actually take the input from the user and set a defined date in a predefined format, right? So stay with me. Let me share my screen so that we can start typing the code to design this Java date class, all right? Okay, so what we are going to do is this date class will have three variables, three member instance variables, and several accessors and the mutator methods. So for example, this will have some one variable for month, string month. This will have a variable integer for day. This will have a variable integer for year. All right. Now, let's say, now let's design the constructor for this class. So let's, first of all, in order to define the constructor, we do not need to use any access modifier. So we simply use the name of the class, right? So we will use actually the access modifier, but not the return type or anything, right? So date, right? So this is a no argument constructor. No argument constructor means this will not accept any argument. So if this is the case, what I'm going to do is I'm simply saying this dot month is equal to, so for example, January, right? And this would be the default value of this variable. This dot day is equal to 1. This dot year is equal to 1 0 0 0 0, right? And now let's overload the constructor, meaning that if the user want to pass the arguments while creating the object, so let's receive those arguments, like for example, public date, and it is sending you the string month, right? And it is sending you the integer day, it is sending you the integer year. Now, in this constructor, we are receiving the value. So first thing that we need to do is we need to check whether the user has sent the valid date or not, meaning that the month value belongs to January, February, March, April or not. The day value is not a negative value or is not greater than the 31 because there are no 32 days in any of the month. If the year value is between a given range or not. So for that, I'm going to use a method that we will be defining just now, set date, and this date will actually, set date method will actually receive these all arguments, month, day, and year, and will set the date for you, right? So let's define the set date method so that we can actually use it here inside the constructor. So let's say this method public, this will actually return nothing, void set date. This method will receive the arguments in form of a string month, integer day, and integer year, right? And then this set month method will set the values to those variables of the class. But before that, in order to check this, let me define another method, date OK. This date OK method will actually again receive these parameters. So to check whether they are fine or not. So how we are going to do that, just give me a second and I'm going to explain it. If date OK will return you true, if date OK method is returning equal to true, then only we are going to set the values. How we are going to set the values, we will see. So, but let's design this date OK method first so that we can get the idea that how actually this date OK method is going to work. Public This will return Boolean, right? Date, okay. And this is going to get a string, month, integer day, integer year, right? And here you actually do not need to specify these data types, right? Because here you are going to simply pass the parameters. You are not going to define the method here. So this method, once we'll receive all these things, now the responsibility of this method is to check. First of all, the first thing, it needs to check month, then it needs to check day, and then it needs to check year. So let me say, check the month first. So how it's going to check month? Say suppose we are going to check the month with the help of the, we can either define another method, we can define, we can write in the same method. So let me define this another method to check month, because if we do it here, it will be very long. So let me say, let me just first define a method, public Boolean month, okay, right? And this will actually receive a string month, right? Okay. And in that case, first of all, if, let me check, if the month that we have received here as an argument, this month refers to this month that we received here. If month dot equals January, right? Or month dot equals February, right? Again, or we have to check all 12 conditions. Month dot equals match, right? And let me just complete this. Okay, so we have checked this condition for all the months dot equal January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. And if it is true, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm simply saying return true, right? Otherwise, in else case, we are going to return false, right? So meaning that this method will actually return true if month value that the user is entering belongs to January until December. Otherwise, it returns false. So now here, this set date okay method that actually calls that will call this method, right? So what I'm going to do is in this method, I'm going to check if month okay of this month that the user has passed, right? And day, the day that user has entered is greater than or equal to 1, as well as this day must be less than or equal to 31. Now for year that user has entered is greater than or equal to 1000, and this year is less than or equal to 9999. That's the range that I am going to set, right? If this is true, then return true. Otherwise, return false. Right. So understand this now. What actually is happening? This date okay method is going to return some, is going to check whether the date is okay or not. So this will return true if this belongs to this one. And then we are going to check this day. So day is the range defined here, right? And then for year, if the year belongs to this range, this will return true. Yes, the date is okay, right? Otherwise, it will return false. So that's what we are going to do here in the set date. If the date is okay, then set the date. Otherwise, do not set the date. If date is okay, then what I'm going to do, this dot month is equal to month. that we have received. So this dot month will actually refer to the instance variable of this class month, and this month variable is the variable that we have received as an argument, right? And this dot day is equal to day. Similarly, this dot year is equal to year. All good? So we have set the date. So that's what we are doing here. We want to set the date using a set date method. Now, this actually receives this month as a string. Now, let me give the flexibility to the user whether if he wants to enter the month number, like for example, the 3rd month of the year, the 7th month of the year. So meaning that, let me override this method with another method, public void set date, that actually receive integer month instead of the string, and an integer day and an integer year, right? And now this method, what this method will do, instead of receiving a string value, it is going to receive the integer value of it for the month. But if you write this dot month is equal to month, that's not correct. The problem is because the month that you are receiving here is an integer. The month that you are going to store the value is of a string type. So the type mismatch is there. So what we need to do is, let's define another method that will actually convert this numeric month number into the string number. So what do I mean is, let me define a method here so that we can understand. What I mean is public, this method will return a string value for the month, right? For example, get set month, right? Or let me more precisely say that month string, right? And this method will actually receive integer month number. And what this number is going to do, this number is going to return the string value for the particular month number. That's very easy. What we can do is we simply can say switch on this month and set up the cases. Cases like, for example, case 1, right? If you are going to get 1, simply return January, right? And if you are getting 2, you will return February, right? So you have to return all for the 12 values. Let me just complete it. All right. So for all the cases from 1 until 12, we are going to return the corresponding month name. And at the end, let me put the default value. If none of the value is true, meaning that user has entered something else from 1 until 12. So I'm going to simply return an error. All right. So that error value will be received here. So here, what we are going to do now is, when we are going to set the value while we are receiving the integer as an month as an integer. So instead of directly initiating this month, what I'm going to say is I'm going to pass this month to the month string, and this month string method will actually return the corresponding string value that now will be stored here in this instance variable of this class. All right. Now that's perfectly fine. The next is easy. The day is okay. We are going to receive, we are going to initialize it. This dot year is all fine. What we are going to receive, we are going to initialize it. Right. So this way, what we have actually done, we have overloaded the set date method to make it flexible whether the user is entering the string month or the integer month, right? And we are going to check whether the date is okay or not. And then we are going to set it here. And by the way, we have to set it here as well. Like, for example, we are going to check this month string, right? And directly, by directly initializing these values, this is not correct. Now, what we can do is we can actually, before doing this, let's do this date okay method over here as well, right? So we already have the date okay method here that actually receives this string value. So let's override this date OK method as well, so that we can figure out in this scenario. Let's see if Boolean date OK. This will receive integer month, integer day, integer year instead of this string. So we want to make it flexible, right? So this basically will return the value, and how it's going to return, we are simply going to check if month value is greater than, let me say month value is greater than or equal to 1, and month value is less than or equal to 12. I have checked for the month. Now I have to check for the day, and the day is greater than or equal to 1, and day is less than or equal to 31. Now we have to check for year. Similarly, year range, year is greater than or equal to 1000, and this year is less than or equal to 9999. So if this is true, then return true, otherwise return false. So basically we have overloaded this date OK method as well with the string and the integer. Now with the string set date method, while we were using with the string, we were using this date OK method to pass these three values to check. Similarly here, I'm going to check if date OK, and I'm going to pass this month, that is an integer now that we just overloaded, but the date OK method, the day and the year. If this is true, right? If this is equal to true, then only we have to do this. Understand this, right? Right? Otherwise, that we cannot set the date. We are going to simply return an error, right? So I'm going to simply print this out like we were printing in. Okay, we didn't print here in the string as well, so we can simply write it sys out, for example, fatal error or error is not, the date is not correct, and let's just shut down the program, system.exit with 0 so that we can fix it out. Now let me just copy this else block, and that I can paste here in the date OK method for this one, right? So we actually have overloaded this set date method with a string month as well as with the integer month. And that makes sense, right? And in both cases, we are going to check the date. Is the date okay with the string as well as with the integer? We have overloaded this date OK method as well. And we also have this string month string method to get the string value of the month number. Now, actually, the story started with the whole with the constructor. So we were having the no argument constructor, that was all fine. But with the argument constructor, we were receiving this month, day, and year, and we were able to set date now. So we can set the date with the help of this constructor now, right? We are calling this set date method inside this constructor, right? Okay, now we can give this flexibility with the constructor overloading as well. Public date, if the integer is received instead of a string, so we can simply use it here. So now we need to set the date with this month, day, and year, because we already have this set date method that receives integer as a month, right? We just overloaded it, right? Okay. Now, one more constructor we can add here is public. If the user just entered only the year, not he's not entering the date and the month. Most of the people, they do not remember the date and the month, they only remember the year. So in that case, we can set it to the default value, set date 1, year, right? So set the month to 1, set the year, the day to 1, and year to whatever the year value it is being sent. Now let's add the copy constructor. Copy constructor is a constructor where you actually do not receive the values itself, but you are receiving as the complete object as a parameter. What do I mean here is, let me just construct, create the public date, and this will actually receive the date type of the object. For example, a date. So it is not receiving the variables, it is receiving the object, a date, whose type is date, right, of the date class. And since this is the object of the date class, it will have all these three variables. So meaning that what I'm going to do is I'm saying this dot month is equal to a date dot month, right? Whatever we have received, we are just copying it to our class. So this dot day is equal to a date dot day. Similarly, this dot year is equal to a date dot year, right? Remember this. This type of constructor is called copy constructor. So while creating an object, we are receiving another object and we are copying all the values, instant values of the instance variables from that object to our class object. Right. So with the help of this, we can actually create this copy constructor. Now, see, we have designed the constructors, 4 constructors, right? We have copy constructor, we have different constructor, we have designed some mutator methods. So mutator methods always start with the keyword, with the word set. So these are the mutator words, set word, set date, right? Set date, and this actually sets the date of the variables of the this class. Now let's design a few more methods. Like for example, we have set date method. Now let me say, let me design few more mutator methods. Like for example, public void set day, set month, for example. Let's start with the month, and you are going to receive a string month, right? So what you need to do is, first of all, if we are going to set month, we simply can set it. Like for example, what we can do is this. Let me see, if we have already the method month, month okay, right? So we can use this method here. If month okay of this month that we have received as a parameter, then only, right? If this is true, then this dot month is equal to month that we have just received, right? Otherwise, in case of else, you simply print a message, sys out. For example, you can say invalid month, right? Okay. Similarly, if you are receiving this set month, public void set month as an integer, right? An integer month. So don't be confused with the string and the integer. We are just learning how to override and how to write the methods in a class, how to define a class. So if this is the case, again, I'm going to check if month okay of the month that we have just passed, then what we need to do is, do we have the month okay method to check? Okay, so we do not need to check the month. If it is an integer, it's all fine. What we need to do is simply we can check it here, like month that we have received is greater than or equal to 1, and the month is less than or equal to 12. If this is true, then get the month. This dot month is equal to month string. We need to get the string value of that numeric month, right? So the reason is because we have the string variable in the class. Okay, so this is the mutator method for set the month. Now let's say, for example, if, let's define one more method, public void set day, and you are going to get the integer day only. So you can simply say that you may be able to check if the day that you have received is greater than or equal to 1 and the day is less than or equal to 31, then only what you can do is this dot day is equal to day. Otherwise, you will be able to print a message, sys out. You can say that invalid day. All right, that's it. And similarly, for the month, you can also say that in the else case, you can sys out invalid month. Now let's design one more mutator method, public void set year, and you are going to receive integer year. And for this, you are going to check if year is greater than or equal to 1000 and year is less than or equal to 9999. In that case, if it is true, this dot year is equal to year. Otherwise, you are going to print a message, sys out invalid year. All right. So we have defined the mutator methods. Now let's define the accessor methods. So accessor methods are the methods that are used to access the value of the instance variables of a class, private variables of class. So remember, the mutator methods does not return a value, but it receives a value. Whereas the accessor methods does not receive a value, but it returns a value. Like for example, if you design a method public string get month, so it will not receive anything, but simply it will return the value of the month. That's it. Whatever is the value of the month variable, right? Similarly, if you define another accessor method to get day, so what you can do is simply you can say return day variable. That's it, right? Public integer get year. So it will simply return the value of the year variable. So remember, so the class has instance variables, class has constructors, multiple constructors. So the constructors are overloaded. Class has the accessor methods, right, to access the values of the private member of a class, private instance variables of a class. The class has the mutator methods. Mutator methods are used to change the value of the private members of the class. When I talk about the private member, it means the very private variables of the class, right? And now, so the class has the other type of methods as well that perform some action, right? That's the whole scenario that we have discussed in the theory class. Now, so we have defined these methods. Let's see. So now let's define the toString and the equals methods in this class. So every class has a toString and equal method from the object class. That's the parent class of all the classes in Java. But it is always the best practice to override the toString method and the equals method. What is override? So we will discuss these overload and override concepts in very detail in the coming lectures. But so for now, overloading is changing the definition of the method in the same class with the different accepting arguments. Overriding is we are going to redefine the method of the parent class or some other class, right? So let's define this toString method. Let me just close these methods. So at the end, let me define the toString method and the equals method. So public string, this always is return the strings. ToString method is used to give the string representation of a method, right? So a string representation of an object. So that in the toString method, what I'm going to do is I'm simply return what? Month value plus a space plus the day value plus a space as well as the year value, right? So we are going to return this value. So all this month, day, year, and everything will be returned as a string, right? So the calling method will be able to use this, this value as a string value. Let's define the equals method. The purpose of the equal method is to check whether two objects are equal or not. It always returns the Boolean value, right? Public Boolean equals. So you already know the equals method of the string that we already have used to check month dot equals January. So that checks whether two strings are equal or not. Here the equal methods will check whether two objects are equal or not, right? So this will obviously, if it is going to check something, so it is going to receive the object. So what type of object it will receive? It will receive the object of the same class, right? Same type object. So for example, date, other object, right? Some other object is being received here. So now the responsibility of this method is to check whether it is equal or not. So we'll return if month dot equals, we will check for all the variables, right? Months dot equal to check with other date dot month, right? Similarly, we'll see and let me just give a space so that you can understand this is a different way. So and day is equal to. Remember, for the integer values, we can always use this equal to operator. For the string values, you cannot use the equal to method to check whether two values are same or not. For that, you need to use the equals method. That's why we use month dot equals. But since day is an integer variable, so we can use day equal to other date dot day, right? Similarly, we can say equal to year is equal to other date dot year, right? If this is true, these all three values are true, this will return true, otherwise this will return false. That's the purpose of this Boolean method, right? Okay. Okay, so the semicolon is missing here. Terminate it, right? Okay, so that's how we are going to define this toString method and the equals method. Now let's test this class in a driver class or in a tester class in a test program. So let me create one more Java class so that we can test it. Like for example, date demo, and we obviously need the void main. So let me just click over here so that we can get it. So this class is here, right? And let's say we want to actually create the object of this date class, right? So for example, if I create the object of the date class, date is equal to new of date. So by calling this line of code, I'm calling the no argument constructor of the class, and no argument constructor of the class will set the values in class. We can see what January 1, 1000. So let's see if we print this. So for example, let me simply print this out and this date, right? And let me execute this program. You will be able to see the output. What is the output? Let me just open it up a bit so that you can see this is the value that we have. This no argument constructor have set, and we are printing the complete object that is actually because of this toString method. All right. Now let's say, for example, if I say I'm going to pass only the year. The year is, for example, 1960. just for instance, right? So now we are just passing this year, right? Not the complete date. So what will happen here? This argument constructor will be called. This constructor will be called that will set the value 1, 1 and whatever the year value we are going to pass. So you can execute this program and you can see the output, right? So January 1, 1960. So for example, now we are going to pass some values like, say for example, April 10, 19, for example, 90, right? And now if I execute this program, what will happen? These three values will be received in this constructor that actually receives the string value. So you can see this will print, well, this set the value and will print those values, right? Now, if I, instead of this, you can also send the integer value. For example, the 4, this will actually do the same thing. So this will actually convert the value into the string value and will convert it that, right? So this is how you are going to call this object. Now let's say, for example, let me say this date dot, we are going to set some value. So for example, let me create a scanner class object so that we can, I mean, by the way, you can actually do many things here. So for example, you can import java.util.scanner class so that we can create the object of the scanner. Let's say to take the input from the user. So for example, scanner scan is equal to new of scanner, and it says system.in end. Now, so for example, let me print a message for the user. Says out, enter date, enter month, day, and year without comma, right? So the user will send that information, and now what I want to do is I want to store that information in the date object. So date dot month is equal to, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say scan dot next, right? And similarly, date dot day is equal to scan dot next integer, right? Date dot day okay. So we can set the date like this, but the better way to set the date is to use the method that we just have created, right? What are those methods? For example, date dot set date, right? So let's set date by calling these values, and these values are at this point is, for example, scan dot next, right? And scan dot next int and scan dot next int, right? So these values will be scanned and will be passed to this set date method, and then these values will be set down. And now you can simply print this object. When you will print this object now, so that object will actually print the value that user has entered, that you have entered. Now let's execute this program and see what happens. Say for example, it first print the values that you have sent to the constructor. Now it says enter the value, right? Day without the comma. So for the month, so for example, I'm going to say June, and for the day I'm going to say, for example, 9, and for the year I'm saying 1998, right? And if you press enter, it will set the date. It sets the June to the month variable, 9 to the day variable, 9, and 1998 to the year variable. Now let's give it another try. So for example, if you say 5/4/2020, see what happens now. It says the fatal error. The reason is because we have printed the fatal error there. The reason is you are passing 5 you are passing 5 to the end or to the string. So if you want to use the number, you have to use this next int. Now, if you execute this, you will be fine. Let's say, for example, 4 and the date is 5 and 2021, right? So this will give you the April 5, 2021, right? So this was how we can design the date class in Java. The purpose of doing this whole exercise is to learn how to design a class. The class contains the constructors, how to overload the constructors. The constructors are of 3 types. One is the no argument constructor, the arguments constructor, and the copy constructor. Then the other thing is to design how to design the methods. So we saw that how we can overload the methods. We'll see this in detail in the coming lectures as well. So the methods, we use this accessor methods, we use the mutator methods, right? And we saw that how we can design a class, right? So hope you have learned from this lecture. See you with the next lectures.